if everything you've chased after success, recognition, the endless race was never the answer? What if, hidden beneath the surface of your hurried life, there lies a secret, a quiet truth, that could change everything you thought you knew about time, about living fully? In the fading light of a room thick with memories, an old man sits, his weary hands resting on the wood. The air is heavy with the wisdom only years can bestow. His life has been long, its pages turning slowly like the soft rustling of a leaf. But here, in the silence of this room, there is something he knows that you have yet to learn. A secret so simple, yet so profound, it will forever shift the way you see time. This man, whose face bears the marks of time well lived, invites you into his world of quiet reflection. He doesn't speak loudly, but his words when they come carry the weight of ages. Lessons learned not from books or teachings, but from living. And as he speaks, you realize, it's not the years that matter, but the depth of the moments within them. Are you ready to hear what lies beneath the surface of your life? To discover the truth that many only find when it's too late? Because here, in this moment, a new way of seeing the world is waiting to be revealed. If only you have the courage to listen. The illusion of time. When he was young, the world seemed to stretch out endlessly before him. Like an open road leading to infinite adventures. Time was like a river that flowed slowly, its current carrying him from one moment to the next, but never rushing. Summers felt eternal, the days stretched out like golden threads woven through his memories. Long afternoons spent running through fields, bike rides with the wind in his hair. Laughter echoing around the dinner table as the sun dipped below the horizon. But now, as an older man, time feels different. It has become a shadow, elusive and slippery, always just beyond his grasp. He watches as the seasons change with quiet urgency. Each passing year marked by the quickening of time's pace. He finds himself looking back, trying to hold on to moments that have already slipped away. In one of his quieter moments, he recalls a conversation with an elderly monk he met in a remote temple in the mountains of China. The monk, now in his 80s, had spent much of his life meditating and studying Buddhist teachings. One morning, as they sat together in silence, the monk smiled gently and said, "When I was young, I chased after time. Now, in my old age, I realize that time was always still. It was I who was running." The words lingered with him. The monk's voice was not filled with regret, but with a quiet understanding. A wisdom born from a life fully lived. The old man could feel the weight of those words, the quiet truth hidden beneath them. It was not time that had changed, it was his perception of it. The frantic race he had been running without even realizing it. The relentless striving, the chasing of goals, the constant worry about the future. All of it had made time seem like a race to be won. But now, in the stillness of his older years, he saw clearly. Time had never been the problem. It was his own restlessness that had created the illusion of time slipping away. The Buddha, too, spoke often of time, teaching that it was not the external world that shaped our experience of time, but our own minds. Time, as we know it, is a construct of perception shaped by our restlessness, our desires, and our attachment to the past and future. The more we chase after time, the more it slips through our fingers. It is when we cease to chase, when we stop running and allow ourselves to be present, that time reveals its true nature. The Buddha taught that our perception of time is distorted by our attachment to it. We spend much of our lives either looking back at the past or worrying about the future. But in doing so, we miss the preciousness of the present moment. When we're lost in thought, distracted by worries or regrets, time passes by unnoticed. It becomes a blur of days, weeks, and months, with nothing to anchor us to the here and now. But when we are truly present, when we are awake to the moment in front of us, time feels fuller. It expands, like the stillness of a forest after a rainstorm, where every leaf, every blade of grass, seems to breathe in rhythm with our own hearts. The days no longer rush by in a blur, but instead become rich with meaning. Each moment a quiet reflection of the deeper truths of life. The more aware we are, the more alive each moment feels. And yet, the more distracted we become, the faster time seems to fly. It is not the number of years we have that determines the richness of our lives. It is the depth of our awareness, the quality of our presence in each moment. Time is not something to be grasped, hoarded, or controlled. It is something to be felt, lived, and experienced with mindfulness and intention. As the old man looks back on his own life, he realizes that the greatest moments were not the ones filled with achievements or accolades, but the quiet, fleeting moments of connection and presence. A shared glance with a loved one. A quiet afternoon spent alone with a cup of tea. The soft glow of the morning sun filtering through the window. These were the moments that had truly shaped his life. They were not marked by the clock but by the depth of his engagement with the world around him. And so, in his later years, he learned to embrace the illusion of time. Not as something to be conquered or controlled, but as something to be experienced with full presence. Time no longer feels like an enemy to be outrun, but a companion to be cherished. Each day is a gift, not measured by its length but by its depth. The more awake he is to the moment, the more life he feels. And in that awareness, he finds peace. For the old man, the race is over. He has learned to slow down, to be still, to let go of the chase. And in doing so, he has discovered the most profound truth of all. Time, in its purest form, is not something we can hold onto. It is something we must let go of, in order to fully live within it. What truly matters? As the years passed, the old man began to shift his perspective on what truly matters in life. When he was younger, success had been something that seemed clearly defined. Measured by wealth, accomplishments, and a never-ending checklist of goals. Each milestone had promised fulfillment. But in the quiet moments of reflection that came with age, he realized how empty that pursuit had often felt. What did it matter to have a house full of things if it was always just a house, and not a home filled with love? What good was a title or recognition if it never touched the deeper layers of his being? He sat by the fire one cold evening, thinking about all those years spent chasing after the wrong things. It was then that Clara's words came back to him. Clara had been a woman who had lived a full life. Raising 4 children, loving deeply, losing her husband. And yet, there she was in her later years, recounting with quiet grace that much of her past had slipped through her fingers. I don't remember most of my life not because I didn't live it, but because I wasn't really there, she had said. Her voice soft, but unwavering. Clara's words hit him like a sudden gust of wind, startling, yet full of truth. She hadn't forgotten her life, she had been too distracted to truly live it. Too often, like so many of us, she had been caught up in the rush, the responsibilities, the striving, and the endless cycles of task after task. She had forgotten to slow down, to be present, and to savor the beauty in the simple moments. In that moment, the old man recognized a profound truth. A realization that was not his alone, but shared by so many who had lived long enough to see the layers of their life peel back, one by one. The Buddha, in his wisdom, had taught that we should not dwell in the past or fixate on the future. The past is gone, and the future is uncertain. But what we have right now, this very moment, is the only thing we can truly hold. This was the essence of mindfulness. The practice of being present with each breath, with each step, with each word we speak, and every person we meet. As the old man thought back over his life, he began to realize that the richness of life doesn't lie in the accumulation of things, but in the depth of our attention to what is happening in each moment. The years had passed, and he could not hold on to every memory or every moment. But he could learn to live fully in the present. And as he did, he found that the present was more than enough, it was all he needed. He remembered the times when he had allowed himself to be fully present with his children. watching them grow, not as a father who was busy with work or distracted by worries, but as a man who could appreciate the laughter, the tears, the little hands reaching up for his touch, the simple wonder in their eyes. Those were the moments that had stayed with him. Not the things he had acquired, nor the milestones he had crossed. It was the depth of his presence that had made those moments unforgettable. The truth was clear now. The more we try to control time, the more it slips away. The more we focus on what is next, the less we appreciate what is now. Life is not a race to be won, but a journey to be fully embraced in every step we take, no matter how small. Each moment is a chance to live deeply, to love more fully, and to be present in a way that we had not been before. It is this awareness, this waking up to the simple joys of life, that becomes the most valuable treasure as we age. The sacredness of relationships. The old man had learned, over time, that relationships are not just the connections we form with others. They are the sacred grounds upon which our souls meet and grow. In his later years, he had come to understand that it wasn't the number of people we knew or the frequency of interactions that mattered, but the quality and depth of those connections. Every conversation, every gesture, every shared moment, was an opportunity to plant seeds of peace, love, and understanding. He remembered meeting Roy, an elderly man in his 80s, at a Buddhist retreat. Roy had spent many years of his life carrying the weight of a broken relationship. A rift with his brother that had begun over a trivial disagreement and had festered for more than 30 years. The years had passed, but the unresolved pain had not. Roy shared with the old man, "I've written him letters, but I never had the courage to send them." The regret in Roy's voice was palpable. But there was something more in his eyes, something the old man had seen many times in his own life. It was the deep, silent ache of relationships left unresolved. The wounds of unspoken words and unmet needs. It wasn't just about the argument, it was about the years lost. The memories not made. The connection that had been severed in the heat of pride and anger. And it wasn't just Roy's story, it was the story of many. The Buddha's teachings on right speech and right intention resonated with the old man, as they always had. He realized that the relationships that truly mattered were not those defined by grand gestures or lofty ideals, but by the quiet moments of connection. Those times when we chose to listen deeply, to speak kindly, and to be present. Each word, each action, no matter how small, left an imprint on the soul. And we carry those imprints with us, for better or worse. The old man thought of Clara again, the elderly woman who had shared her truth with him by the lake. She had told him that she didn't remember much of her life. But she had also shared a simple but profound story about the people who had shaped her. There were those, Clara said, who I thought I had lost, but I never really lost them. I just let the silence grow too loud between us. Clara had found the courage to reconnect with those from her past. And it was through this simple act of reaching out, of choosing to forgive and to be forgiven, that her relationships were healed. There had been no grand apologies, no sweeping gestures, but only a quiet willingness to show up, to be vulnerable, and to care. And in that, she had found peace. The old man understood now that it wasn't about being perfect in our relationships. It was about showing up with our hearts open, ready to listen, to speak with kindness, and to make amends when necessary. It was about finding the courage to reach out, even after years of silence, and to mend the threads of connection that had been broken. The Buddha had taught that love is not about grand acts of heroism, but about the small, everyday choices that we make with intention and care. He recalled a time when he had let an argument with a close friend go unresolved for far too long. The silence between them had stretched on for months. And in that time, he had let pride stand in the way of healing. But one day, as he sat alone by the fire, he realized that the years spent holding onto that hurt had robbed him of something far more precious than pride. It had robbed him of peace. So, he picked up the phone, and with a simple "I'm sorry," the bridge between them was rebuilt. It wasn't about right or wrong, it was about the act of reconciliation. The willingness to heal and to be healed, no matter how much time had passed. In the end, the old man understood that it is the relationships that teach us the most. They are not always easy or perfect, but they are where our true growth happens. Whether we are healing old wounds or nurturing new connections, the love we share with others becomes the foundation upon which we build our lives. Relationships are sacred, for they are the soil from which our souls grow. And when we treat them with respect, with honesty, and with care, they nourish us in ways we never imagined possible. Purpose and inner work after retirement. When the old man retired, he stood at a threshold. For decades, his life had been a well-oiled machine, each day filled with tasks and challenges. Each year marked by achievements and milestones. He had built his career with the precision of an architect, meticulously designing structures that would outlast him, crafting solutions to problems that seemed insurmountable. But when the routine of work faded away, he was left with an unsettling silence. His days no longer held the same clear-cut structure. And with that void, he found himself facing a question that seemed both simple and profound. Now what? For much of his life, purpose had been defined by external measures. The buildings he designed, the goals he achieved, the recognition he received. But now, in the quiet space of retirement, those external markers no longer served as a compass. He was no longer defined by his job, his achievements, or his place in the world of work. The familiar rhythm of deadlines, meetings, and responsibilities had come to a halt, leaving him adrift. In those early days of retirement, he would sit in his chair, feeling the weight of time stretch out before him, unsure of where to direct his energy, unsure of who he was without his work. He met Richard, a retired architect in his 70s, who shared the same sense of displacement. "I don't know who I am when I'm not building something," Richard said with a hint of vulnerability in his voice. His words resonated deeply with the old man, as he, too, had spent so many years identifying himself by his work. Richard's confession was a mirror for the old man's own struggle, a reflection of the deep emptiness that can come when the external structure of life dissolves. But as time passed, the old man began to understand something deeper about purpose. The Buddha taught that true purpose does not come from external achievements, nor from the validation of others. True purpose arises from living in harmony with our values, from aligning our actions with the deeper truths of our lives. It is not something to be earned or achieved. It is something to be discovered, nurtured, and embraced from within. The old man realized that retirement was not the end of purpose, it was the beginning of a new kind of purpose. The cessation of his external work opened a door to a different kind of work, an inner work. He no longer needed to build skyscrapers or solve engineering puzzles. Instead, he was now called to build something even more profound, his own inner life. At first, this new purpose seemed elusive. He spent hours reflecting on his past, pondering the years he had spent chasing after recognition and success. But slowly, the old man began to find joy in the small, seemingly insignificant acts that had once been overlooked. Gardening became a meditation in patience and growth. Writing in his journal allowed him to explore the depths of his thoughts, to document the lessons life had taught him. He began to reconnect with his loved ones, nurturing relationships that had long been put on hold during his busy years. The time that had once felt like a burden now became a gift, an opportunity to rediscover the simple joys of living. He embraced the stillness that came with retirement, recognizing that it was not a void to be filled but a space to be inhabited. It was within this space that he could finally slow down and listen. Listen to his own heart, listen to the world around him, and listen to the wisdom that life had to offer. He found that purpose, true purpose, was not found in what he did but in who he became in the quiet moments between doing. Retirement, in the end, was not a time to rest on his laurels. It was a time to cultivate a new way of being. The old man found that as the external noise of work faded away, he could turn inward and connect with the deeper parts of himself that had long been neglected. He could finally be present, truly present, in his own life. Creative expression in later years. The old man had never considered himself an artist. He had always been too focused on building, on doing. But now, in the later years of his life, something began to shift. He had spent so much time creating for the world, for others. But he had neglected the creation of something for himself. His mind, once sharp and restless, now sought a new kind of expression. A way to share his soul, not with the world, but with himself. At the age of 75, the old man picked up a paintbrush for the first time. He had always wanted to paint, but for years, he had told himself that there was no time, that there was no purpose in it. But now, with the space of retirement before him, he could no longer ignore the longing inside him. It wasn't about creating masterpieces or impressing anyone. It was about creating for the sake of creating. About expressing what was inside him in a way that felt true, authentic, and deeply personal. He began to paint not for perfection but for expression. His brush strokes were not planned or calculated. They were instinctive, guided by a deep inner knowing that had been long buried beneath the demands of his earlier years. The colors he chose seemed to reflect his state of mind. Soft blues and greens, warm earth tones. The quiet colors of nature that had always calmed his soul. As he painted, he found himself letting go of the pressures of achievement. There was no expectation, no rush. There was only the process, the simple joy of the act itself. He remembered Martha, a retired woman he had met during a meditation retreat. At 71, Martha had picked up a paintbrush for the first time, just as he had. She had always loved noticing the beauty around her but had never thought she had the skill to capture it. "I think I always loved noticing," she had said, smiling gently. "I just didn't know it had somewhere to go." Her words resonated with him deeply. And he realized that he, too, had always loved noticing. The way the light danced on the leaves in the morning. The way the wind whispered through the trees. The quiet beauty of the world that so often went unnoticed. Painting became his way of capturing those moments. Of giving them a space to exist beyond the fleeting seconds they occupied. Buddhist teachings on creativity emphasize that the act of creation is not about achievement or recognition. It is about expression, about being present with the moment. Every act of creation, whether it is painting, writing, or simply arranging flowers in a vase, is an act of mindfulness. It is a way to connect with the present moment. To channel our awareness and our energy into something that reflects who we are at our core. The old man began to understand that age does not diminish the desire to create. Rather, it frees us from the constraints of perfectionism. It allows us to embrace the simplicity of expression without worrying about the outcome. He no longer had to worry about whether his paintings were good or worthy. He could paint for the sake of painting, create for the sake of creating. In doing so, he rediscovered a joy that had always been there, waiting for him to slow down and listen. The beauty of aging, he realized, is that it strips away the need for validation, for approval. It allows us to return to the pure, unfiltered joy of creation. The old man had come to understand that creativity is not something reserved for the young, for the ambitious, for the famous. It belongs to anyone who is still alive, anyone who is still willing to connect with the present moment, and share what they see, what they feel, and what they experience. As he continued to paint, the old man found that his soul was healing in ways he never expected. The colors on the canvas became a reflection of his own inner world. A world that had once been so busy and preoccupied with external accomplishments, but now was filled with peace, gratitude, and a deep appreciation for the simple beauty of life. As the old man sat back in his chair, the quiet weight of his years settled into the room. And with it, a profound understanding. He had lived a life of striving, chasing achievements, always moving forward. But now, in the stillness of his later years, he knew that time was not the enemy, it was the teacher. The Buddha's wisdom had taught him that life is not measured by how much we accomplish, but by how fully we live each moment. With a soft smile, he leaned forward, his voice low but steady. Live not with urgency, but with presence. For it is in each moment, fully embraced, that we find eternity. The words hung in the air like a timeless truth, inviting you to pause, to breathe, to feel the depth of your own life. And then, he offered his final thought. It is never too late to begin again. No matter where you are, no matter what has passed. The present moment is your chance to start anew. So, let go of the rush, the expectations, and simply be here. The time to live fully is now. If these words resonate with you, if you feel a stirring to live more deeply, then join me Whisper of Age, where we explore the timeless wisdom of truly living. It's never too late. Let's begin together.